Welcome everyone to this week's Founder Chat. I'm really excited to have here Ghalia Aamer, who is the founder and CEO of TalkMaze. So if you haven't been to one of our Founder Chats before, we do these typically weekly, and we take since I think it's been almost a year now that we started doing these, and it gives us this great opportunity to meet some of the founders in our network and learn about their origin stories and about what they've been up to over the past year in particular, what the future looks like, all of these kind of exciting things. But while we have kind of some questions that we're going to get through, I would also like to invite everyone who's joining us here to say hello, as I see some of you are doing. Let us know where you're joining from, and feel free to ask questions as well, and we'll throw those in there too. So really excited to be here, and I think we've met Ghalia through the Canadian Small Business Women Young Entrepreneurs Pitch Conference back in November, where you claimed first place at the pitch event. So I'm really excited. And I remember being so excited about the work that you're doing because public speaking was always something that was quite difficult for me when I was younger, and I've kind of worked for 16 years to get to a place where I'm comfortable with public speaking. And I know it's something that, like, everything from the youth I work with that are like 10 up to any age of entrepreneur often end up talking about this kind of struggle with public speaking. So really excited. I do want to just mention that today's founder chat is part of Startup Canada's Startup Woman program. So we're going to do 4 founder chats this month, all focused on incredible women in our community in Canada and in Europe as well, included within this Startup Woman program. And this program is presented by Sovereign Insurance, as well as UPS, Scotiabank, Inniskillin, PayPal, EDC, and SIPO. So lots of people working together to put on programming for women this month, which is great. So enough about me, though. I would love to know a little bit more, and I'm sure everyone wants to know a little bit more about you, about TalkMaze, about how you connect individuals with professional virtual, individuals and schools with professional virtual public speaking training and debate training. So there's lots going on here.
Yeah.
Let us know kind of, I'll hand it over to you. Let us know kind of who you are a little bit, and kind of why you started TalkMaze as well.
Yeah, for sure. So, well, I definitely echo everything you said about how public speaking is a struggle for everyone. It doesn't matter if you're 10 or if you're a professional. It really is a struggle. And it was a struggle for me too. I struggled to speak up when I was younger. I was afraid of talking to people to the extent that my teachers would pull me aside at recesses and say, hey, you should go and try to join that friend group, because I literally would not talk to anybody.
Right.
And I joined the debate team at my school in grade 7. And this was one of the only schools in my city who actually had a debate program. So I was very lucky I was attending that school. I joined the debate team because my parents pushed me to do that. And that changed my life. So I went from somebody who wouldn't talk to anybody, like literally I wouldn't talk to anybody, to speaking at the provincial championships that year, winning the provincial championships in my 3rd year in grade 9, and then representing Alberta at the national championship several times. And that was something that I could have never expected myself to do when I was much younger, because I was so quiet. There's no way I could have expected, even just like talking to you here on an IG live, I could have not expected I would do that, because that takes confidence. And that's something that people struggle with, and especially young people. And so I then started volunteering at my former junior high, grew that team from about 20 to nearly 80 students interested. And I kept volunteering for 5 years, still volunteering there to grow that team. And I've worked with hundreds of kids since then, between like the ages of 12 to 17, seeing them grow into confident leaders. And I think that's really what public speaking, debate, all of these skills are about. It's about growing into confident leaders. And that's what we do. We work with youth to help them grow into community leaders, because those skills can take you so far. And so I launched TalkMaze last year to expand that for more people. Because even in Edmonton, the one school I've coached at, they had coaches because I was volunteering there, but less than 15% of middle schools in Edmonton, and even less in many other areas, actually offer these programs. So through TalkMaze, we are connecting with schools, organizations, nonprofits, anyone who works with youth right now. So between the ages of, like, our focus is between the ages of 12 to 18, but really any organization, school that's working with youth. And we help them either build public speaking programs. So we completely run their public speaking or debate programs. currently we're doing everything virtual to make it more accessible. And we also offer individual training. So what's like one-on-one training for anybody looking to build effective communication skills on our platform at talkmaze.com, so that they can actually get the guidance of someone who's experienced. That's another struggle that I faced when I was doing public speaking or debate, was that there were experts in like Toronto or Vancouver, but I'm in Edmonton, so I couldn't connect with them. And so that's also another barrier we're trying to fill.
Absolutely. I love that so much. I've seen lots of like hearts going up the side. So I'm guessing there's a lot of people that this is resonating with. Feel free to jump in the chat and let us know if this resonates with you. And if you've ever struggled with public speaking. It was the same for me. I was kind of at the point up until I started university. I didn't start university till I was 24, where public speaking would make me just like completely sweat. My hands would be shaking uncontrollably. I'd get really quiet. Back when I was younger, it would make me just like shake all over and cry. And I was someone who wanted to change the world. And I was very confident in many areas of my life. So I was very confused. Like, it wasn't a good metric for my confidence in other areas, but I was like, I want to change the world. I was a little like environmentalist. I want to change the world. And I was like, I can't do that if I can't talk to people. So I love like this angle of like the leadership element. And I love that I'm seeing so many youth leaders right now, or youth that are very passionate about so many things that are going to really help change our world, which is fantastic. And you're right, like this public speaking element is so important. And now working with entrepreneurs, I see this all the time. I'm now starting to work more with like people who English is not their first language, and they've moved, they're newcomers to Canada, or not even newcomers to Canada, but they've come to Canada and they're saying, I can't replicate my like change movement or my leadership skills that I had in my home country here because I don't feel comfortable speaking in English. So that's a whole other level, but I think everything you're doing is so important. I love it so much. And so like I'm so impressed. Like you launched this last year, and you've already done so much with this. So I'd love to know what have been some like kind of like big moments over the last year for you. Yes, go TalkMaze. Our young generations need this today. Absolutely. So what has this kind of looked like? It sounds like you're getting into lots of schools, and what's been kind of like a big, I guess, like learning point for you as an entrepreneur during this?
That's a really good question. Also, just to go back to your point about those who have English as a second language, public speaking skills are so helpful. Like if you just even practice in front of a mirror and like give yourself 1 minute to just speak on a topic, and try to do that in English. Learning a different language, even if you're like an English speaker trying to learn French or a different language, that's super helpful.
Yeah.
So that's just one point there. But oh, sorry, I thought I was cutting out for a second. Yeah, and then in terms of a challenge over the past year, yeah, it's been really crazy because of COVID. We actually, like, I had been planning to launch TalkMaze since 2019, so that was before COVID, and I was still planning to do everything virtually because we wanted to ensure greater accessibility. So the plan was virtual anyway, and we're actually only going to offer private coaching. Like we were going to do the one-on-one coaching online, and we were going to facilitate our own group sessions, and that was the plan. But then when COVID hit, we realized that there's actually more potential, and I thought that we could connect with organizations or schools. And so we've only recently started with this new vision of actually making a larger impact through partnering with schools or organizations and launching programs and running those. And so that's been a challenge in itself, and also working with a remote team, our coaches, our team members, even our core team, like one of us is from Fort Mac, one is from Edmonton, one's from Ontario, one's from the States. So working with a remote team is challenging, and that did take some time to figure out, like, okay, how do we keep everyone accountable? How do we make sure that we're hitting our goals? We have our KPIs in place. How are we doing? Making sure that we're on track. And so that's been a challenge. I would say that's one of the biggest challenges, but it's also been a huge learning point. And I think that's something that I've been able to apply in my other areas too. Like now that I'm doing group projects, I'm in university as well. So when I do group projects in university, it's kind of the same kind of accountability. So skills I've learned through managing a remote team over the past year have been beneficial. Like we meet now every single Saturday. We have a nice meeting, and it's very nice in a way too to be remote and in different time zones, because like if I need something done and someone is in a different time zone, like for me, it might be later time, but for them it's still earlier and things like that. So you can kind of plan things accordingly. And there's also so much flexibility, which I love flexibility because I have a busy schedule. So I like to be able to like plan my things around. And I think my team appreciates that too.
Amazing. Yeah. I love that you were thinking about doing this virtually to begin with. And it makes sense. In working with entrepreneurs from, and women in tech from Edmonton over the past 4 years, I guess, that was often a thing where they're like, I don't want to have to go to Calgary or Vancouver for this kind of programming. When is it going to be available virtually? So I love that you were thinking about that from the beginning. Okay, so you've kind of touched on your vision a little bit, and like that you've kind of like added this element of partnering with schools and organizations. So what does the rest of that vision look like if you were to like envision your team, let's say even like 2 or 3 years from now? What does TalkMaze look like?
Well, our visionary like goals there to be in every school across the country. Every single school needs this program. There are not enough schools who are offering these programs at all, let alone offering them accessibly. Being virtual lets those kids go home and access them. There's after school debate programs in certain schools, and they're only in those certain schools. And even those, that means like some parents can't be there to pick their kids up at 4:30 or 5. They have to pick their kids up at 3. And so there's so many problems. And so my vision is to be not only across the country in schools, but organizations and nonprofits, but across the world. We have a roster of coaches from 13 different countries, and a huge part of TalkMaze is also about encouraging global understanding, because communication, especially today, is not just about within your own country. It's about being able to communicate across borders. And especially in the past year, we've seen that like there are no more limitations of where you are. And so a long-term goal is to build a global community. It's really important to me too that through TalkMaze, like when students sign up for TalkMaze, they aren't just getting our coaching services, they're becoming part of a community. And I want to grow that community to be a global community of passionate speakers and debaters, coaches from around the world who can help each other. Community is so important.
Yeah, amazing. Now I know I wasn't going to ask you this originally, but it seems like you have some really great tips on public speaking, and I'd love if you have, like, from working with all of these incredible students and people who are learning public speaking, if there's like a very common pain point and a very common tip that you end up giving. I would love to know. Not to put you on the spot with that.
Oh yeah, you're putting me on the spot, but that's what public speaking is about, right? You're putting on the spot. So I'd say, like, in this context, I would say knowing your audience, right? Like when I'm talking to some people on IG Live, that's very different. And those are little things like, how am I going to dress? How conversational am I versus how much of it is a formal speech? And so knowing your audience, I would say, is like the number one tip I can give, because you have to know who are you speaking to. Ultimately, like whatever you say or however you say, it's going to that audience, right? So if you're pitching your business in front of judges, you might even want to research those judges. What kind of backgrounds are they from? If they're VCs versus if they're like from nonprofits, that can be very different. And likewise, like when I'm working with kids, I'm working with 12-year-olds, I'm talking about public speaking, it's very different than if I'm talking to adults or professionals. And so knowing your audience is key. And in order to, like, how do you know your audience is like, do your research beforehand, but also during your presentation or speech, like feel free to be flexible. I think that public speaking isn't as formal as we sometimes make it out to be. It's a lot more about just connecting with people on a human level. Because public speaking, if communication, we're all human. We're trying to get by. We're trying to do our best. And so it doesn't have to be a formal presentation or speech. If something changes when you're talking to people, be flexible with your audience and engage them in that way.
Absolutely. Yes. That's also kind of like, what am I trying to say? Goes nicely into my next question, which is going to be around entrepreneurship. But the reason it does, because that's the kind of tips we give, like you were talking about when you're preparing for a pitch. And I know you're going to be pitching at March Madness coming up potentially.
Yeah, I just
pitching it. Yeah. Okay. Oh, you did. Okay. Okay. Fantastic. Yeah. Preparing for your audience is so important with that kind of, not just with pitching, with so many different things. Every time you're walking into a networking opportunity, or kind of like anytime you're talking to people in kind of a public space, being aware of that and having that flexibility and the human-to-human conversation. That's actually one of the ways that I starting to get most comfortable public speaking is reminding myself this is a human to human conversation. And I would just say that over and over and over to myself. I'm talking to a human. And people will say, like, it feels like I'm broadcasting, especially in a virtual space. And it's like, no, it's still a human to human one-on-one conversation, because there's still one person who feels like you're talking to them at the other end. Like every person who's here on this IG Live, whether now or later, it's still you, Ghalia, talking to that person. So
Exactly.
I think that helped me kind of like quell nerves over years with lots of practice as well. But it really, really helped. So that's a great tip for entrepreneurs out there, whether you're starting out now or wherever you are in your journey, for kind of anything, is to know your audience, do research. That's also something like in terms of addressing like different biases that you might be walking into, knowing who you're going to be pitching to can help with preparing for that. As just a side note, as it is International Women's whatever day, week, month, and so on. So in your experience building TalkMaze, then what has, and like building this incredible vision as well, and you have so many dreams, which I love, of going super international, going global, in fact. What kind of tips do you have? What have you learned? What kind of tips would you have for another entrepreneur who may be starting out just today and watching this and thinking about, should I become an entrepreneur? What should I do? What are some tips?
Yeah, my number one tip is to just go for it. I hear so often, especially from young entrepreneurs, that I just don't think I'm ready yet. I don't feel like I have the knowledge yet. I feel like I have to finish my degree, or I don't have time. That's another one I often hear. I don't have time,
Right.
or I'm not ready. Okay, so let's talk about I'm not ready. Like, I don't have enough knowledge. And I'll talk about I don't have time. Okay, so not having enough knowledge, like, you will never have all the knowledge in the world. Entrepreneurship, like, it's just, entrepreneurship means you're going to always be learning. I started my first business, Two and Tutors, in 2015. I was 13 years old. I knew nothing about business. I come from a family with no experience in business, and just going for it, I learned so much. Like, it wasn't that successful in our first year. It wasn't that successful in our first 2 years, but I learned so much from just going for it. Even with TalkMaze, I was in my first year of business when I started TalkMaze, and I'm now in my second year. I'm still studying, but building the company, I've learned so much. I've learned so much from my experiences in high school with entrepreneurship. And you're never too young. Like, if you're 13, or you're never too old either. It doesn't matter how old you are. Both ways. Like, just go for it. I often hear, like, I'm just too young. I can't do this right now, or I'm way too old. I should have done this 10 years ago. But no matter what, in 6 months, you'll be 6 months older. Like, if you start now, you could have a business by 6 months from now. And so just go for it, and also utilize your network. And if you don't have a strong network, build that. People are a lot more willing to help than we realize. Just in the past, so I launched TalkMaze in June 2020. So that means, like, everything I've done with TalkMaze has been virtual. I have literally met hundreds of people virtually who I've never met in person, and I have the strongest network for TalkMaze right now because I went out and I just made those connections. It takes like a 15-minute call, or applying for that pitch competition, just going for it. People are willing to help, and if you build your network, it can really, really be helpful. And you're never too young, you're never too old. You can build the knowledge as you go. There's no better way of learning than by doing it. That's my initial piece of advice. And then the I don't have time. Make time for what you're passionate about. We never have enough time, but you have to prioritize things that matter. And if you think that starting a business or entrepreneurship is right for you, like, I feel like entrepreneurs have this thing, like, it just tells them, like, no, I have to do this. And if you're getting that, like, feeling, that gut feeling, like, this is something I have to do, go and do it. The worst thing that can happen is you fail, but you will still have learned a lot more from that journey than you will ever lose. And so make time, and making time works. Like, even if you just, like, go think about your day and be like, okay, what do I spend my day doing? You will notice, like, we waste so much time on distractions, whether that's, like, switching from task to task or things like that. You just watch your time and realize that not having time is often an excuse because of a deeper fear of failing or something else like that. And if you can reflect on that by yourself and realize, do I really not have time, or is this something that I'm afraid of doing, or I feel like I won't succeed? And then you can sit down and just go for it. I think a huge part of entrepreneurship is not being afraid of taking risks and not being afraid to fail. Just go for it.
Or being afraid but still trying it. It's okay to be afraid. Yeah, but try it out. And
I say often is, like, be afraid and do it anyway. So what if you're afraid?
exactly.
Like, do it again, do it anyway, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic. But oh, and the thing, something that like you said that kind of resonated a lot with me is that I found in my career as an entrepreneur versus I worked in the federal government for 10 years previous to that, as well as in nonprofits and lots of different things. But this journey of entrepreneurship over the past 6 years, I guess, um, has really helped me hone in on my and come back to my values and my why. So if you're someone who wants to have like values and purpose driven work as well, it forces you to do that because you don't want to spend all of these hours of your day working on something that you don't care about very deeply. So it's helped me to really, and like
Yeah.
our like volition has been shaped by Paul and myself and the team by all of our values and our personal whys, because that's where we end up kind of funneling our energy, especially over time and as I'm getting older and I'm kind of coming back to that like advocate and that environmentalist and all those different pieces that I was when I was younger, in particular. And so that's been a really cool journey for me, is to come back to that, after so long of just kind of like doing, working in like an office environment that wasn't right for me, and wasn't a good fit for me. So that's something I've really loved as
Yeah.
well. Yeah. Okay. So I also, for all of those who've joined since the beginning, it's really lovely to have you here. And whether you're here or on IGTV or YouTube later, thanks so much for joining us. We're kind of in the last like 7 minutes here, so I have a couple more questions, for Ghalia. But if you didn't see the beginning, please do come back. It'll be posted within a few hours, typically on our IGTV. And you can watch a little bit more about the origin stories and where TalkMaze came from, and some public speaking tips as well. So go check that out. Yes. Okay. So I feel like we've gotten that good understanding of the origin story and the vision and this kind of global vision of taking this, being able to communicate cross-culturally, across borders and all these things, which I love that vision. And had these really great tips of yours as how can, things to think about as an entrepreneur. So I'd love to know, you've given us a lot here today, just in the last 25 minutes. What can we, as your community, do to support you and TalkMaze? So what would your ask here of us be today?
My number one ask these days is connections to schools, to any organization that works with youth. Because what we're doing at TalkMaze is a bit of a new idea to schools and organizations when we go to schools and say, hey, we want to run this public speaking or debate program for you, or like basically introduce this program. Some schools or administrators are even confused, like, why do you want to do this? And so any connections are always useful. Whenever I get a connection and I can just have a call one-on-one. And so if anybody watching, if you're at a school, or if you're an educator, or if you have any connections to former teachers or administrators at schools, or even like nonprofits, we also work with nonprofits that work with youth, like cultural nonprofits, any kind of nonprofits like that, organizations that work with youth. I would love to get any connections. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. My Instagram is here. My LinkedIn handle is the same. Email me at ghalia@talkmaze.com. With those connections, I would really, really appreciate it, because those connections can really make a difference in helping us reach that vision that we have. We have a big vision. And so really schools, organizations, anyone who would be interested, and they have a platform of people who benefit from public speaking or debate coaching and training and resources. So just let me know. I would love to connect with people. And also, even if not, like, I'm also happy to help. If there's any way I can help for anyone who's on the live or anything like that, feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to chat.
Great. Is the best place for people to chat with you then via your Instagram or LinkedIn?
Yeah, email, LinkedIn, Instagram, I'm everywhere, so whatever works.
Okay, perfect. All right. And if you're looking to find out more about TalkMaze, you can also go to talkmaze.com. And it looks like you're also on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn at TalkMaze, or in some cases at TalkMaze with a little underscore, but you'll find it. It seems to be kind of like consistent branding all across. Everyone can find that easily. Okay, so I know that something else, I feel like we've touched on a lot around like, the importance of teaching effective communications. I know that's something important to you, youth empowerment, community leadership. I know we've touched on that, but was there anything else in that kind of domain that you wanted to talk about here today or bring up?
Yeah, I think that one thing that comes to my mind is that the other thing is to not be, like, as an entrepreneur or anything you're doing, is to not be afraid of like thinking, what are other people going to think? I spent so much of like my first business, Tune Tutors, not even telling people that I'm doing this because I was afraid that people would think that, well, think like, or judge what I'm doing, judge about what I'm doing. The other thing is like everybody's kind of living their own life. Like people do care about what you're doing, but also like it's kind of a benefit that everyone is living their own life. They're not just dwelling on your successes or your failures. And that's also a really important thing to consider. Like even if you fail or you succeed, people will see that on one day. But the next day, like they're moving on with their own lives. And so don't worry, nobody has it all figured out. Like literally nobody has it all figured out. And so take a break also. That's something I used to struggle with. I would never take a break. I would just constantly working on my business or working on school. But now like I have fun, but I also work hard. And I think that's super important is to don't worry, nobody has it all figured out. Take a break and enjoy life. Like enjoy every moment of the journey. So I have to remind myself sometimes that too. Like if I run into an issue for TalkMaze, I feel like it's the end of the world. I feel like it's a big deal.
Right.
But I remind myself, I'm like, wait, this is just one little thing. I've done so much with TalkMaze. There's a long way to go, and this is part of the journey. Every failure, every success is part of the journey, and that's what life is all about. So enjoy every moment of it.
Absolutely. And there are some really ups and downs sometimes in the same day. I'll get an email in the morning and I'll do something I don't like to do, but I continually do, which is always look at my email like first thing in the morning. And I'll get a horrible email and I'm like, oh, this is devastating. And it just like really brings me down for my entire morning until I get outside and just like how, so I you know, you do have to train yourself to be like, this is just this moment. This is just this email. This is not the end of the world. I'm just going to take a break. I'm going to go on a 15, like I'll turn on my, an audiobook or a podcast and I'll set it to 15 minutes and just like only go for 15 minutes or whatever it happens to be. Or if I hit 15 minutes, that's when I turn around to go home. So like I have to like design it into my life. And I think that's such an important point. So is there anything that you're celebrating at TalkMaze right now that we can like, you're like, yes, take a moment to celebrate.
Oh, sorry. We are actually taking part in the March Madness pitch competition, which I think you mentioned earlier. So cheer us on. We made it past round 1. March Madness is run by SMU in Canada, and we're taking part. We made it past round 1, so we're in the top 32 competitors, and hopefully we'll pass the next round. But cheer us on there. We also do have regular workshops going on for TalkMaze. So if you want to check us out on Instagram at TalkMaze or just send us a DM, we'd love to reach out and just let us know.
Cool. All right. Sounds good. Everyone, you heard it here. Go check out TalkMaze on all the socials and stuff. It sounds fantastic. I'm sure this speaks to and resonates with a lot of people in our audience who are working through that challenge with public speaking in various degrees. So I wanted to thank you so much for being here. And again, also thank you to Startup Canada's Startup Women Fund, or program, I should say, as well as all the co-presenting sponsors. Really appreciate the support that we get from these incredible Canadian organizations and industry that's supporting entrepreneurs. Very cool. So thank you so much for being here again. I do have one last question to kind of round us off here, which is, what is one thing that brings you joy right now?
I'm just looking outside and I want to say the weather, but something deeper is my friends and family. I can't thank them enough for the support that they give me. It's the little things that matter, and they are so supportive. I have the best friends and family, and so thank you if you are watching, or if you're watching later. They are so supportive. And also, like, another piece of advice is keep those people close. You know, when you find the real ones, you got to keep them close.
Amazing. Yeah, I love it. I love it. And weather counts too. Weather really impacts our moods, doesn't it? So that's legitimate as well. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I'll be back here not same time and same day. It'll be Tuesday at 11:30 a.m. talking to Leah Koss of Build-A-Biz Kids. So I would love to see you there as well. And thank you again so much, Ghalia. It's really great to get to know you a little bit better here today.
Yeah, this was super fun. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you next time.